Hello, math friends. Today we're talking about equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions. What are equivalent fractions? Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. First, we're going to check in with Molly. Today is her birthday, and her mother made her this beautiful birthday cake. But then the family went to a movie, and they left the cake on the kitchen table. And when they got back from the movie, there didn't seem to be quite as much cake left. It looked like only half the cake was left. Wonder what happened there. Well, then Molly noticed, and she exclaimed, 2/4 of the cake is left. And when her brother noticed, he said that 3/6 of the cake was left. Then the dog noticed, and for some reason, he chimed in and barked something that sounded like 3/8 of the cake is left. So who was right and who was wrong? Well, let's start with what we know. We know that that looked like half a cake, right? But what if that cake had been cut into fours? Now it kind of looks like 2/4 of the cake was left. And what if it had been cut into 6? It kind of looks like 3/6 of the cake was left. And what if it had been cut into 8s? That kind of looks like 4/8 of the cake was left. So who was right and who was wrong? It looks like Molly and her brother were right, even though they said different fractions. And surprisingly, the dog's math looked a little bit off. He thought it was 3/8 and it's really 4/8. So this gets us back to what are equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are fractions that look different but represent the same amount. Let's take a break from all this cake talk and check out some examples with number lines. Here I have two number lines. They both cover the same space from 0 to 1. The number line on top is cut into 3 pieces. The dot's 2 spaces over, and that represents the fraction 2/3. On bottom, number line's cut into 6 pieces, and the dot is 4 spaces over. It represents the fraction 4/6. You can see here that the dots represent the same distance along the number line. That means that they represent the same value. They are equivalent fractions. That means they're equal, but they're just written differently because of the fraction they represent. Let's try another. Here we have a model. It's kind of like fraction strips all stacked up on top of each other. This helps us see which fractions represent the same amount, because wherever the lines line up, those fractions are equivalent. Let's try one together. Let's see if we can find a fraction that's equivalent to 1/3. Well, looks like in the row of 6, I've got some things that line up here. Looks like if I use 2 of the 6, that's going to be the same amount as 1/3. So 1/3 is equal to or equivalent to 2/6. Let's try another one like that. Here I have a 4th. Do you see anything that looks like it lines up with a 4th? How about in the 8s? If I go 2/8 over, that's going to be the same amount. Do you see it? There it is. 1/4 is equal or equivalent to 2/8. Let's look at another example. A brownie example. Delicious. Okay, let's see. Who could be equivalent here? Well, they each have some brownie left, and they each have some blank space. And the one in the middle looks like it has more blank space. So I think the one on the left and the one on the right are equivalent, and the one in the middle is not. It looks like less brownie there. So 6/8 and 3/4 are equal. They're equivalent fractions. Okay, let's look at these two number lines. They both represent the space from 0 to 1, but the one on bottom is broken into 2 pieces, so that first tick mark is 1/2. Is there another way I could write the number 1 here? Anybody have a guess? If you guess 2/2, you are correct. 2/2 is equivalent to 1. Madness, right? It gets crazier because that works for your other number lines too. This top one's separated into 3 pieces, and the 1 could be 3/3. Here, 4 pieces, 4/4, 6 pieces, 6/6, and 8 pieces, 8/8. They're all equivalent to the value of 1. Okay, if you were wondering about cookie cake and representing a whole, well, you can do the same thing here. So each of these represents one whole cookie cake. They're just written differently because of the way the cakes are cut. Okay, now you can go have an equivalent fractions party.